Bennett reveals that his boss's inappropriate advances at a company event led to his sudden termination days later. The day after I told him no, my access badge stopped working. 2 years of loyalty erased because I wouldn't cross a line he shouldn't have drawn. I still remember my first day at Apex Marketing Solutions like it was yesterday. The gleaming glass tower in downtown, the pristine lobby with the company logo that seemed to promise endless possibilities. For someone who'd clawed his way up from community college with a marketing degree and mountains of student debt, landing this job felt like touching the face of God. My name is Bennett Wallace, and for 2 years, I poured my soul into that place. The marketing team became my second family. We'd pull all-nighters launching campaigns, celebrating wins with cheap champagne, nursing each other through the inevitable failures. My portfolio grew impressive. The Westlake account, the viral Burton campaign that increased their sales by 37%. My colleagues joked that I must be sleeping at the office. Little did they know, some nights I actually was. My tiny apartment was just a place to shower and change before heading back to chase that next big idea. Then Marcus Devereaux took over our department. Tall, immaculately dressed, with that perfect smile that seemed to win over every client and executive. He came from one of those Ivy League schools with connections that opened doors I didn't even know existed. At first, he was everything I aspired to be. "Bennett, you've got raw talent," he told me after reviewing my portfolio, his hand resting on my shoulder just a moment too long. "I can help shape that into something extraordinary." I felt seen, valued. When he invited me to join the strategy meetings with the C-suite executives, I thought I'd finally broken through the invisible ceiling. We'd stay late working on pitches together, Marcus bringing in sushi and expensive whiskey. He'd touch my arm when laughing at my jokes, stand just a bit too close when looking over my designs. I brushed it off as his European background, or maybe just his way of building team rapport. My mother always told me I had terrible instincts about people. Turns out she was right. The company culture at Apex was complicated. On the surface, all polished professionalism with diversity statements framed in the lobby. But behind closed doors, the rules bent for those with power. Everyone knew about the special relationships that sometimes developed between executives and their favorites. The whispers in the break room, the knowing glances when certain pairs would leave the holiday party together. I'd always stayed clear of that scene, letting my work speak for itself. My boundaries were simple: respect, professionalism, and keeping my personal life separate from my career ambitions. What I didn't realize was how that culture enabled people like Marcus, how the HR department existed not to protect employees, but to shield the company from liability. How our female colleagues had learned to navigate these waters years before I ever had to think about it. The signs were everywhere. The administrative assistant who suddenly transferred departments, the junior copywriter who quit without notice after the summer retreat. But I was focused on my career trajectory, blind to the predatory undercurrents swirling around me. That night at the industry conference in Chicago changed everything. The night the lines Marcus had been subtly testing for months were finally crossed in a hotel bar with no witnesses except a half-empty glass of bourbon and my own shattering illusions. I never imagined that maintaining my principles would cost me everything I'd worked for, or that my refusal would ignite a fury in Marcus that would leave me standing in the parking lot 3 days later, holding a cardboard box of personal items, watching my security badge deactivate in real time as rain soaked through my only good suit. The Morrison Media Conference was supposed to be my big moment. I'd secured a speaking slot to present our revolutionary campaign for Nexus Sportswear, and Marcus had personally selected me to represent Apex. "This could fast-track you to senior management," he'd said with that trademark smile. I spent weeks perfecting my presentation, rehearsing until my roommate threatened to move out if I practiced my opening lines one more time. The presentation went better than I dared hope. Standing ovation, business cards thrust into my hands, competitors eyeing me with newfound respect. That evening, Marcus insisted on celebrating at the hotel bar. "To Bennett," he toasted, clinking his crystal tumbler against mine. The new star of Apex. Each drink loosened the professional boundaries between us, his compliments becoming more personal, less about my work and more about me. "You know, Bennett," he said, leaning in so close I could smell the expensive cologne on his neck, "you and I could be unstoppable together." When the bar crowd thinned around midnight, Marcus suggested we continue our celebration in his suite. "I've got a bottle of Macallan 25 up there," he said, his hand now resting on my knee beneath the table. "And some things I'd like to discuss about your future at the company." The way his fingers pressed into my thigh made his intentions unmistakable. My stomach twisted as reality crashed down. This wasn't mentorship. This was a transaction. "I'm flattered, Marcus, but I think I should head to my room," I said, carefully removing his hand. "It's been a long day, and we have the panel discussion tomorrow." His expression shifted instantly, the warm approval hardening into something cold and calculating. "Don't be naive, Bennett," he replied, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do you think you got this speaking opportunity because of your talent alone? I put my reputation on the line for you." When I stood to leave, he grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "People who say no to me don't tend to last long at Apex." I pulled away, anger flaring. "Are you threatening me?" The words came out louder than intended, drawing stares from the few remaining patrons. Marcus stood smoothly, straightening his custom suit. "Threatening you? God, no. Just disappointed in your lack of professional flexibility. Apparently, I misjudged your commitment to advancing your career." He tossed cash on the table with deliberate casualness. "Enjoy the rest of the conference, alone." The next morning, Marcus was nowhere to be found during my panel discussion. My texts went unanswered. When I returned to my room afterward, my company credit card was declined at checkout. I had to use my personal card, the one I reserved for emergencies, to cover the $1,200 hotel bill. Back at the office Monday morning, my access badge triggered an error message. "System shows you're no longer authorized," the security guard said with genuine confusion. "Let me call upstairs." I stood in the lobby, cheeks burning as colleagues streamed past, avoiding eye contact. 30 excruciating minutes later, Diane from HR appeared with a cardboard box and a security escort. "I don't understand," I stammered as she led me to a small conference room. "My performance reviews have all been exemplary." Diane's expression was professionally blank as she slid termination papers across the table. "We've documented several instances of underperformance and inappropriate conduct at the Chicago conference," she explained, pointing to Marcus's signature at the bottom of the report. Apparently, I'd been disruptive, unprepared, and had made unwelcome advances toward a senior executive while intoxicated. "That's a lie!" I slammed my palm against the table, making Diane flinch. The security guard stepped forward. "Marcus is the one who—" But the words died in my throat as I saw the futility reflected in Diane's eyes. The decision had been made, the narrative written. Rain was falling as they escorted me to the parking lot, my personal items pathetically few after 2 years of devotion. Through the glass doors, I saw Marcus watching from the lobby, that perfect smile now a victorious smirk. Something inside me broke, not just my heart or my pride, but my faith in the system I'd trusted. I stood there, rain soaking through my clothes, as my badge deactivated with a final electronic chirp. In that moment, I knew this wasn't over. This wasn't defeat. This was just the beginning of something neither Marcus nor Apex was prepared for. The week after my termination was the darkest of my life. My apartment became a shrine to self-pity. Takeout containers piling up, blinds permanently drawn, phone calls from concerned friends ignored. I replayed every interaction with Marcus, questioning if I'd somehow invited his advances, if standing my ground had been worth destroying my career. The rejection letters from potential employers started arriving. Marcus had been busy, it seemed. While your portfolio is impressive, we've received concerning information about your professional conduct. The industry wasn't as big as I'd thought. Rock bottom came on a Tuesday night. Bourbon in hand, I found myself scrolling through Marcus's social media, seeing his smiling face at an industry gala, arm wrapped around my replacement. A young man with the same hungry look I once had. Something snapped. The glass shattered against my wall, amber liquid trailing down like tears. "Enough," I whispered to my empty apartment. The next morning, I shaved, showered, and started fighting back. First, I retrieved every text, email, and voicemail from Marcus. The seemingly innocent messages now read differently with context. The late-night checking-in texts, the comments about my appearance, the thinly veiled suggestions about special projects we could work on together. None of it was explicitly damning on its own, but together they painted a picture. Then came the breakthrough, a LinkedIn message from Sophia Chen, a former graphic designer who'd left Apex 6 months before me. "I heard what happened. It wasn't just you." Over coffee, she shared her nearly identical experience. The mentorship, the advances, the rejection, the termination. The only difference was that she'd signed an NDA in exchange for severance. "But I kept everything," she said, sliding a USB drive across the table. I was waiting for someone else to speak up. By week's end, I'd connected with 3 more former employees with similar stories. Marcus had a pattern, and Apex had a problem. With trembling hands, I called Patricia Morrison, a labor attorney whose card I'd collected at the conference, before everything fell apart. "They're counting on your shame keeping you quiet," Patricia explained during our first meeting, her office walls lined with framed settlements. "Men like Marcus target ambitious people who have too much pride to admit they've been victimized." She leaned forward, eyes fierce. "Are you willing to fight? Not just for yourself, but for everyone else he's done this to?" The plan we developed wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. About standing up not just for myself, but for Sophia, for my replacement, for everyone who would come after, if nothing changed. Patricia helped me file a formal complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, documenting the harassment, the retaliation, the wrongful termination. We gathered affidavits from the others, building a case that couldn't be ignored or buried in confidential settlements. I mortgaged everything I had left to fund the fight, moved to a cheaper apartment, sold my car, picked up bartending shifts to pay Patricia's retainer. Each sacrifice strengthened my resolve. Each night mixing drinks for strangers reminded me what I was fighting for: my reputation, my career, my self-respect. The transformation wasn't just external. Something was changing inside me. The desperate need for approval replaced by an unshakable certainty. I'd spent years molding myself to fit into spaces created by others. Now I was creating my own space, defining my own worth. For the first time, I understood that my value wasn't determined by my position at Apex or Marcus's approval. It came from standing firmly in my truth, even when standing alone. When Patricia called to say Apex wanted to meet, I expected settlement discussions. Instead, she said, "The board wants to hear directly from you. No lawyers, no HR, just you and them." The fear was there, threatening to paralyze me again. But now it shared space with something stronger. purpose. "Tell them I'll be there," I said, feeling the weight of Sophia's trust, of all the stories that had been silenced before mine. "And tell them to clear their schedules. They're going to want to hear everything I have to say." The Apex boardroom was exactly as I remembered. Intimidating, pristine, designed to make visitors feel small. But I wasn't a visitor anymore. I wasn't even an employee seeking justice. I was the reckoning they never saw coming. 10 pairs of eyes watched me take my seat at the massive mahogany table. No Marcus in sight, a small victory that steadied my nerves. I placed a single folder before me, though I wouldn't need it. Every detail, every date, every violation was seared into my memory. "Mr. Wallace," began Eleanor Frost, the silver-haired chairwoman, "we appreciate your willingness to speak directly with us about these allegations." "They're not allegations, Ms. Frost," I replied, my voice stronger than I expected. "They're experiences. Mine and others." For the next hour, I laid out everything. The grooming disguised as mentorship, the retaliation, the systematic way complaints were buried. I named names, dates, witnesses. When I finished, the silence was deafening. Director Abrams, a man who'd never spoken a word to me during my time at Apex, cleared his throat. "If what you're saying is true, why didn't anyone report this behavior through proper channels?" The question ignited something primal inside me. I stood, palms flat against the table. "With all due respect, sir, we did." Sophia Chen reported to HR 3 times. Jamie Winters filed a formal complaint. I tried to speak with Diane from HR the day I was terminated. "Your proper channels exist to protect Apex, not its employees. And you've known about Marcus's behavior for years." Eleanor's face drained of color. "That's a serious accusation." "It's in your own records," I cut in, pushing the folder toward her. Inside was an email chain Patricia had subpoenaed. Board discussions about risk management regarding Marcus's management style dating back 3 years. "You didn't just enable him. You calculated that settlements were cheaper than losing his client relationships." The meeting ended abruptly after that. Lawyers were called, statements prepared. I walked out feeling lighter than I had in months, regardless of the outcome. 3 days later, Patricia called with news. Marcus had been terminated, effective immediately. An internal investigation had uncovered 5 more cases, some involving employees still at the company. The settlement came a week later, substantial enough to clear my debts and give me time to rebuild, along with a formal apology and retraction of all negative references. But the real victory came 3 months after that, when Apex announced new company-wide policies on harassment and retaliation, with independent oversight and mandatory reporting to the board. Sophia called me the day the announcement went public. "You did it," she said, voice thick with emotion. "You actually changed things." "We did it," I corrected her. I never returned to Apex, despite their offer. Instead, I partnered with 2 former colleagues to start our own boutique marketing firm with one non-negotiable core value: integrity above all. Our first major client? Apex's biggest competitor, who'd been watching the whole saga unfold with great interest. Last month, I ran into Marcus at an industry event, his first appearance since the scandal. The perfect suit was gone, replaced by something off the rack. The confident smile replaced by a defensive scowl. He tried to avoid me, but I walked directly to him, extending my hand. "Bennett," he muttered, reluctantly shaking it, eyes darting around for escape. "I want to thank you, Marcus," I said clearly, aware of the curious onlookers. "You taught me something valuable, that my worth isn't determined by my willingness to compromise my principles." His face flushed crimson as I continued. "I hope you've learned something, too." I didn't wait for his response. Didn't need it. As I walked away, I felt dozens of eyes following me, not with pity or scandal lust, but with something I recognized from my own mirror: respect. That night, sitting in my new office overlooking the city, I thought about the young man who'd been so desperate for approval that he'd almost lost himself. The man who measured success by others' standards. He was gone now, replaced by someone stronger, someone unafraid to stand alone when necessary. The path to rebuilding wasn't easy. Some doors remained closed. Whispers still followed me into rooms. But, for every closed door, two new ones opened. Opportunities with people who valued integrity as much as talent. My story traveled through the industry like wildfire, not as a cautionary tale of career suicide, but as proof that speaking truth to power isn't just righteous, sometimes it's revolutionary. The scar from that rainy day in the parking lot will always remain, a reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. But scars also mark where we've healed, stronger than before. I keep my old Apex badge in my desk drawer, not as a memento of trauma, but as a promise to myself and everyone who works with me now. Some lines are worth drawing. Some boundaries are worth defending. And when we refuse to go down quietly, the echoes of our stand can change more than just our own stories.